All right, welcome back. We're on the next section of the Declaration here. Now, you have to remember back to the previous, that was the preamble. If you remember about the preamble, it came in three parts. Remember this, wink, wink. It was, what was the first part? The first part is what government should do. The second part was what the people can do if the government gets too bad. And then the third part was it has gotten that bad, and we're going to prove it. So now we're to this section. This is where they list the things that are bad. So this is the list of bad. I'll even put a little mean face right there. Boy, I should have been an artist. So here we have a whole list of the things that the king has done that they're using to prove that this government is so bad that it's worth getting rid of. So we're going to go through these. We'll read some of them more quickly and kind of skip over a bit, but some of them we'll talk about a little bit. And you can think about things that they've done in history. So let's move in here and talk about some of these things that they have done. The first one, he has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. So they're saying here that the king does not always allow the best laws to happen. Sometimes he doesn't do what's best for the people. The next one, he has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend them. So the thing is here that sometimes it just takes too long. He won't let the people govern themselves unless they are, unless the king approves, and it takes so long because remember at this point there's no email. They have to send the thing all the way over. Then the king doesn't even get to it. It just takes too long for rules to happen, and the king won't let them rule themselves. Let's see. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people unless those peoples would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. This is an important one right here. Maybe you could put a little star right there on it. So this is the no taxation without representation type of a thing. He says he won't pass laws unless the people relinquish the rights of representation. In other words, they have to allow the king to rule all by himself without any representation. And this, they're saying, is inestimable, like we can't even consider that, and formidable to tyrants only. So here's that idea of him being a tyrant and not ruling with the way that it should be, like John Locke says, with the people's representation in mind. Going on. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. So he's saying even when they have legislative bodies, they make it so difficult to go that it's not even worth going, and it just drives the people nuts. The next one. Let's see. Oh, it looks like that one's somehow on there twice. That's a misprint. So, hopefully yours doesn't have that, but you can just cross that off because it's the same one. Shame on me. Right. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. So here's another kind of important one. This is what we saw with the intolerable acts of Boston. Remember, he got rid of their ruling. He got rid of all those things because they were resisting his bad laws, and because they were resisting the king's bad laws, he got rid of their government. So he dissolved representative houses repeatedly. So this this happened specifically in Boston. You can mark that down and remember that. Next one, he has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. So again, some of the problems with not letting the elected people rule. We're going to move on. That one's a little bit wordy, so we're going to go into this one. There's some important ones down here. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migration hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. So this is some laws on immigration and how they can, remember they had to have charters to get specific lands, and the king controlled all this, and they're saying, well, the king doesn't have the right to control all of our pursuit of happiness, right? We're in charge of that ourselves. The next one, he has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. So this was an important one. The king was still in charge, so he could decide how the courts went. But the people said, we want our own courts and rule our own way. But he says, nope, you can't do that. You can't have your own judicial system. You can't have your own courts. You have to do it my way. So he made it the king's court only, or only if the king approved it. But the people did not think that that was right to do. Going on. He's made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. Now think about this. If the judges are dependent on the king, who, and for their salary, if the king pays them, who are they going to decide for? They're probably going to want to decide what the king wants. So these judges become not partial, or they become partial. The judges decide what's best for the king because they want to keep the king happy. If the judges don't keep the king happy, well, they don't get to keep their job. So they're saying that's not right. The judges should be, who should they be dependent on? Not the king, but they should be dependent on the people instead of the king, so that they do what's right for the people and not just what's right for the king. Next one. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out of their substances. Again, you can easily see this happening in Boston when they had to send all these people in to control the trade and control all the new laws that they had passed. But swarms of officers, kind of a nice hyperbole there, to harass our people and eat out of their substance. So not only did they have to deal with all these people controlling them, they had to feed them too. Now here's some of the important ones too. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without consent of our legislature. So he kept the troops there. He kept soldiers. We saw this again in Boston when the soldiers were there. This led to the Boston Massacre, remember? The Boston Massacre was because the people were kind of annoyed at all of the soldiers that were staying there, and they caused the problems. So keeping these soldiers there was kind of a big deal. He's also has affected to render the military independent of and superior to civil power. So even if they had rules in their own cities, it didn't matter. The army could do whatever they wanted. The army was in charge. So they didn't even, if they had a law in that city or something that they followed, it didn't matter. The army decided what was right. The army was in charge. And of course, Americans don't like that because, again, it's not consent by the governed. So here we are. Again, this is the first part of it. We haven't gotten through the whole thing, but this is the main list, or the first list of the things that are bad. Bad enough that we want, that they decided this was good enough that they wanted a new government. That these were things that weren't right. And if you notice, the biggest one is representation. They wanted to be able to control themselves, but the king was saying, no, you cannot control yourselves. All right, so here's the first list. There's still more coming up in the next one. We're not done talking about all the bad things that the king did.